as it is because of the way things are going.
But here's the problem, okay? And because of the way we are organized politically in Massachusetts, 351 cities and towns, 351 separate kingdoms, all doing the same thing, okay? And it's an outmoded way of being organized. They don't do it this way anywhere else in the country, okay? It's
We
very
lost the
costly. The problem is, the
seconds.
governor can make a statement, we have all this land,
Life show.
and it would be good to have this land developed from the standpoint of creating housing, all right? And I don't think she's talking public housing. She's talking regular housing. The issue is that once the land is released, that land is going to fall within the confines of one of our cities and towns. And at that point, the local zoning takes over, okay? So unless the state does something like they did with the MBTA zoning initiative, unless the state puts some sort of a requirement on the use of this specific land, that it be zoned a certain way, once that land is released into the public domain and people are able to buy it, however that thing is developed is now a matter of local control.
Unless they do
Unless
40Bs.
Unless the state, well, and that's always an option, okay? If you go into a town that,
The only way around the zonings,
yeah,
right?
well, there are other ways, but 40B is probably the easiest, and it's the most tried and true because it's been on the books now for almost 60 years, okay? So people know how to navigate the 40B situation. But if you go into a town that doesn't have safe harbor, then, like to Evelyn's point, if a developer wants to buy property and do a 40B project, there's very little the town can do to stop it. The only two things that are effective is if you can find an environmental impact reason that the project shouldn't be done. You go in and you find out that some species is going to be endangered and so forth. That'll stop a 40B. The other thing that'll stop it is public safety. If you have a project that's designed in such a way where either the police or fire make a determination that it negatively impacts their ability to respond, then that can stop a 40B. But really, those are the only two things. The local zoning is out the window when it comes to 40B. The local zoning ordinances don't apply.
You know, when we were talking about Concord Prison there,
Yeah.
I did 20 years at that place, not 32 years. I couldn't
As a
stand-
corrections officer,
I was
folks,
gonna say-
not as an inmate,
I'm
okay?
sorry, as
Not as an inmate.
As a prison.
As an employee.
As a prison
Right.
guard.
We want to
okay?
make that very clear, don't we?
No, I was a prison guard. I don't even call myself a correction officer because I didn't correct anything. They're just going to keep coming back.
Well, in the old
When
days,
you
we
work-
called them prison guards.
When you
Right.
work at a state level, these are people that have done more than half their life in jail. They're 40 years old and they've done 22, 24 years in jail. That's all they know.
You're
That's
talking about
where-
the inmates.
Yeah, state inmates, not
Okay.
like Barica House of Correction. I'm talking state inmates.
jail is only
And
temporary,
I've
right.
been retired, don't forget, 15 years, but my legacy there was I thought I was better than a drug-sniffing dog. They used to always have me work the med lines because I could find the most pills. They're one step ahead of you, us on the outside, as far as like making home brew or finding something to get high on. Well, right now I've been retired 15 years and I've gotten so much information from people that are still working there, and it's going to come to the city. Whatever happens in prison falls to the city eventually, because they make big money. Even a cigarette was $20, and that's one cigarette, $20, and that's 15 years ago. They got a thing called K2. I don't know what it is. It's a drug called K2, and they're having all kinds of drug overdoses, and we need to do something about it. I hope someone from the
Not
state
good.
hears me. K2, yeah.
If the
Sam,
ci-
you want to read this one?
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
Oh, if the city has extra money, then why are the councilors saying taxes are going up? Well, does the city have extra money?
And how much? And if it's not enough, then they have to raise taxes.
How do we know? Well, the city will have free cash at some point. So maybe that's what the poster is talking about.
Right, which is a little bit different than having extra. It's how you budget your money.
Well, the city of Lowell has a history of using free cash year over year to fund ongoing operations, which is probably not a good thing to do, but that's what they do, so.
Yeah, I don't want to turn Thursdays into a bad day. I'll wait till Tuesdays to talk about schools, but when I seen the mayor couldn't even get one vote at the last, when the school was finalizing their budget. He just said, I'd like to get the schools to come together with the city and let's talk about facilities and keeping them up. That's all he said. And not one vote because, and I can see the school
Were they
committee.
voting on the budget?
Now, what's really happening is, the underlying story is, it's called maintenance of effort.
Yep.
It's roughly $50 million the city charges us, the schools, to rent the buildings. That's how I feel, to rent their buildings that they don't maintain. Now, if that maintenance, that's something that killed someone from Chelmsford, Dr. Kafawi. Once he brought that up, that was the end of him. That was the end of Dr. Kafawi, right there. The racial issue too, the telephone texting message, that hurt a few egos, and see you later, doctor. He lives in Chelmsford, a great man,
Yes.
a great man.
Yeah.
And he got burnt over maintenance of effort, Sam. I don't know
No,
much
I
about
remember,
it,
I remember the story, yeah.
but Danny was just saying this, let's go sit down and talk, the mayor, I should say. We just want to talk. There you could fix some issues maybe with maintenance of effort, but they don't want to go near that issue. The school committee didn't. I was really
You're talking about the city,
surprised.
you're talking about the city council.
No, I'm talking about the schools. They didn't want to give the mayor one vote on, let's get together.
Okay,
Get in
so,
a secret squirrel meeting, I don't care.
Yes, John?
Okay, so about 10 minutes ago, we lost internet.
Oh, yeah.
oh, no.
So I don't tell the people at the panel we lose internet because it takes all the wind out of their sails.
No, no.
So we were down for like 30 seconds, which means I have to reestablish connectivity. So it's just a couple of clicks on my mouse over here. But
Oh, that's
that's why we
okay.
went down. We lost internet. It's a thing that Comcast does when they feel like it. They don't tell you. Just shut that off.
And that's
let's
what's hurt,
restart that.
and
So-
that hurt
It
views.
happens,
So it's behind us. On page 2.
it does happen with Verizon,
I'm
too.
doing page 2.
Okay.
Why do we pick on the city of Lowell? Because they can't sue us. Why do you pick on the town of Chelmsford, town of Tewksbury, Drake, Tingsboro? Because they can't sue us. If we pick on Sam's Macaroni Company, we're going to get a lawyer from Sam's Macaroni Company telling us, knock it off, and they'll sue our pants off at the same time. So when you listen to talk radio, talk TV, the reason they're griping about the government is the government can't sue us. That's why. So I want to put those 2 points out there. I got this text for Bobby to read.
There is never enough money in your pockets for the politicians to spend. Does 37 trillion in debt ring a bell?
Well, that can segue into some other stuff that we talk about, is that you have a current administration that's trying to reduce what the spending is and trying to increase the revenue, and you have judges that are trying to stall it all or to prevent it from happening. And when I have different conspiracy theories with regard to that, especially if they want to bring the downfall of the country. They're certainly doing it quite well. But one of the things that's currently out there is how much in Medicare they're going to cut. And you have one political side saying, oh, you're going to cut all this Medicare, and people aren't going to get this, and people aren't going to get that. But you have these millions or billions of dollars that are going to illegal aliens, and they are the ones that they're trying to get off those rolls. You have people that have the ability to work, and they've been given Medicare. Some things may be temporary until people can get on their feet, but at that point, then it should go away. Instead of having socialized medical care, which is basically what it is that they're trying to establish. So if they are trying to cut the Medicare budget, they're trying to cut the people off that are not here legally from getting the benefits, because the people that deserve the benefits aren't getting enough.
Could you read these 2, please?
We also have a state government trying to block an audit. Why is that? No, they're afraid of what it is they're going to find. Most of the Lowell taxpayers don't care about the school budget. They care about not being able to afford living here.
That's probably a true statement.
And that's true everywhere.
I don't believe the second one, though. I think the people that vote, most of the people that vote, they care about their schools.
But
in
what's the-
Lowell.
what's the
They don't
percent-
vote. We don't have a lot of people that vote.
I was going to say, what's the percentage? You've got 10, 12% of people who vote in the city election?
Yeah,
They probably care
I'm
about.
guessing,
school
I
budget.
say if you get 9,000 people out of 75,000, 80,000 registered voters, you're lucky.
So the question, and I agree with that, the question I have is this, for Evelyn and anyone else. Have you read the budget? Have you read the bill? Have you actually read the legislation, the big, beautiful bill? Have you read it?
No.
Then you don't know what it says.
Well,
No, you don't.
I understand. No,
you
I
don't.
didn't say I did.
Okay. All right, so I think you get my point.
And
So
you've read it.
Yeah, so my point is, no, I haven't read it. I have not read it. But my point is that if you are listening to the media telling you what's in the bill, you are probably being misinformed, okay? And if you are listening to the spin. So before I make a statement that the bill cuts Medicaid or doesn't cut Medicaid, I want to read the thing, okay? That's all I'm saying, okay? It's the point I'm making, all right? So we can have all these opinions, but until you've actually read the bill and you know what it says, and you know what the effect would be if it were passed, then you really don't know, okay? Now, having said all that, without having read the bill and listening to both sides of the argument, it sounds to me like the truth is in the middle somewhere, okay, which it usually is. So the perception I have is that it does take people off of Medicare, okay? To Evelyn's point, it appears, however, on the other side of the issue, that the people being taken off of Medicare are people who some would say shouldn't be on there in the first place. In other words, illegal aliens and so forth, or people who are not working, okay? So there's truth on both sides. Yes, people are being taken off of Medicare rolls, maybe. But the question really is, well, who are those people? And now, and at that point, the discussion becomes now, is that right or is that wrong? Should anybody be taken off of Medicare, or should some people be taken off of Medicare? So that's the issue, I think. You know, as far as the budget is concerned,
Lowell had a big, beautiful budget.
I
They
think
loved- They loved their budget. It was
the issue,
beautiful.
you know, forget this bill. The issue is that since the late 1990s, the United States has run an annual deficit. Why is that? Why can't we balance the budget? Why do we deficit spend?
Are you asking us to give our opinion?
I'm saying that is the issue, okay? So you either believe that we shouldn't deficit spend, we should have a balanced budget every year like we have to in the state of Massachusetts, okay? Or it's okay to deficit spend every year. That's the issue. All right, so what do you think? Should we deficit spend or should we balance the budget every year?
No, we should not deficit spend.
Okay, well, that's the issue
Because
then,
I
isn't it?
can't do that in my household.
No, because you can't print money and you can't create credit, which is the way we deficit spend, okay?
Well, I think there's a lot of pieces that Doge brought out that I think the American public were not aware of. And that's part of the transparency. And even on some of the liberal news stations, they are making comments about the fact of how transparent everything is. And because they're telling everything, that's why everybody can criticize, because now they know something. Now, when we had Biden in office, even though they knew something, they were not sharing it. And you see it in all the different books that are coming out. And as we talked off camera earlier, is that it's highly unlikely as a president of the United States that somebody didn't know his medical condition, whether it was a mental medical condition or a physical medical condition, because they all go through the same analysis, and everybody wants to know what's going on with Trump, but nobody seemed to want to know what was going on with Biden. So,
Evelyn, okay, Reagan, when Reagan got shot, completely out of the picture, that was all covered up. And did the American Congress, Senate, or whatever you want to call them down in Washington, did they do anything about the cover-up that President Reagan was completely incapacitated right after he was shot for over a day. Nothing happened. Nothing's going to happen over this either.
Well, I
When
didn't
you're in
say
the
that
White House,
something
when
was
you're in
going
the
to
White House,
happen.
everything's a big secret.
I'm talking about that there's a double standard, and there's always been a double standard, whether it's between male and female, or it's between
If you
Democrats
live-
and Republicans.
We live in Democratic TV land, 4, 5, 7, 11. I don't care what Boston station you listen to. They're the sore losers sitting on the Democratic side of the table, and they're going to be disgruntled because their candidate didn't win. Okay, I respect that. Go to YouTube and go watch TV down in Texas. Live TV in Texas. You get the same news, but it takes all the Democratic spin off it. That's what I'd suggest you do. Get off Boston.
Well, I think that's.
I don't want Boston
I think that's good advice, and I would take that a step further. You need to watch multiple news sources. So if you are a political left-winger, you need to spend a couple of weeks watching Fox. If you are a right-winger, you need to spend a couple of weeks watching MSNBC.
Yeah, but I get indigestion with
And
that.
I get that, but that's what you should do, okay? Because again, you're getting spin on both sides.
Well, also, Sam,
Yeah.
recently added to Comcast lineup, you can get Sky TV, which is from merry old England. It's live.
Yeah.
So if you just tell your smart remote
I
Sky News, it goes over to
I think your
Sky
advice is good. I think people need to go beyond, because what people do, and we all know this, and I'm guilty of it myself, and I admit it, we tend to go to those sources that basically confirm what we already believe. That's what we do as people.
Well, I'm
okay?
watching for Kellyanne myself.
Yeah, so to John's point, it's a good idea to get outside your little box, challenge your belief and value system once in a while, and watch another source. Now, you can watch the BBC through other means as well. I think
Al Jazeera is great.
Al Jazeera, that's a great one. But you know, people need to do that. If you're getting all your information from Fox, you are not getting the whole picture. If you are getting all your information from MSNBC, you are not getting the picture, and you're getting spin, okay? So that's the problem. And again, as people, we tend to like having our opinions confirmed. So those are the sources we go to. That's what we do, most of us.
My 9-year-old granddaughter told me, Papa, can we go play wiffle ball? Why do you watch that channel so much? I'm just a Fox person.
And she's 9 years old?
9.
What
Yeah.
a smart kid.
She'll, before I can babysit
smart
her,
kid.
she'll ask, are we going to play outside, or are you going to watch news? She don't want me to be on the
I'd
TV.
rather play wiffle ball with my
Yeah,
granddaughter.
I like staying involved with the whole world. And
I don't
local
watch a
and
whole lot of television.
Yeah,
We
I only
have-
watch.
We have
that's
quite a
what-
few of them, but I don't watch it. I prefer, because
My wife
I get-
watches the Hallmark Channel.
I don't even watch that anymore, because I just,
It's the same story over and over again.
well, because I get up so early, it's very difficult. And to,
Excuse me, kids.
yeah. Anyway, with what we watch on television, it used to be amusing, because Glenn would say, oh, are you watching the Hallmark Channel again? I like watching it around Christmas time. Currently, I would watch anything if I had the time, but I like watching Food Network, and I like watching Bravo and different things where you have competition. Master Chef, Top Chef, Tournament of Championship, all of the different competitions. We used to watch, what was it, Julia Child, when she was on
God.
Channel 2.
She was a riot.
Oh, yeah. So we have, the analysis. It isn't that we don't like the programs. I love all the programs. It's my schedule just doesn't fit into being able to watch all of those wonderful shows anymore.
Bobby's turn.
Go on YouTube, Nate Friedman Show. I expose who got rich from the migrant crisis in Mass. Your blood will boil over the waste, fraud, and abuse right here in our own state. He's a real independent journalist. You might even ask yourself, where is the local media on this?
All right, so my comment, again, based on the last sentence that you just read there,
Yeah.
again, the local media And I think what we're talking about is Channel 5, Channel 7, Channel 4.
Just real quick, Bob, can you read this one?
Go ahead.
The news in this state is full of lies and misinformation to its citizens. Turn off the news.
Yeah, so, and that's consistent with what I'm saying as well. The local media, again, it's a ratings game, and they're going to deliver the news the way they think the constituents who watch want to hear it. That's what they do. This is why you get a left slant on our local media, because we're a left state. To John's point, if we were in Texas watching the news, we'd get a right slant, because that's what the folks down there want to hear. And it's a ratings game. Am I wrong? You're in the media. Am I wrong?
That's why
Right.
is the weather all about here?
Well,
It's all about what kind of weather we having in Chelmsford.
exactly, all right? And that's what we want, because we don't
That's
really
what
care
we don't
about
wanna hear about
we don't care
California
about the
weather.
weather in South Carolina, unless it's going to move up the coast and hit
Well,
us.
that's
So-
that NIMBY concept, not in my backyard. And
But it's
there's a lot
reality.
of it.
It's reality.
Yes, it is. People don't care until it settles in, like what, you know.
I want
in
to
front of
see
your
I
house.
want to see a dog park right in front of my house, right in
I
front
mean,
of
if
it.
they're gonna have it, they might as well do
And
that.
I would like a
You already
speed
got
bump.
one.
And I'd like a speed bump, Eric, if you could get that
Oh, boy.
done too.
Now that-
Because that's the biggest issue in our city.
Well, wait, that's
Imagine
a-
this kid.
That's a hot issue in Chelmsford right now,
I
is
know
speed
you
bumps.
know Eric Getcha, okay? He does
Get out
his,
there with a hairdryer, Bob.
he does his homework like I've never seen anybody in my life. He can't get, my wife even said to me last night, how come, Bob, he can only get tops 4 people to vote with him? And the only time I think he ever got 4 votes is when the city manager's contract extension. Change is coming to Lowell. Look at what happened. We had to wait. We thought Trump and the red wave was going back about 8 years ago. Remember, we all thought, oh, the red wave, here it comes, and I'm independent, unenrolled, whatever you want to call me, but I was hoping for the red wave, and it didn't happen. But right now, watching the news, I think the Republicans aren't doing their job. Come on, get it done. You got everything, all the power you need, and you can't even get it done.
And they ought to be out there, now whether the media is covering them or not, they ought to be out there talking about what it is they're doing and citing sections of the big, beautiful bill to support what it is they want to do. And there's a lot of pieces to that which, you know, we can go into or we don't have to go into. But when we're talking about the comment that one of the viewers made, there was an article I sent this morning, only so that you guys would have it, is the amount of fraud that's out there in the EBT cards. They got rid of the paper food stamps because they were capable of printing them. Now what they're capable of doing is drawing the money off the EBT card holders and basically embezzling funds into the millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they don't understand, especially with New York State, why aren't you investigating what's going on with this versus all the other crap that you're investigating? Because this directly affects your taxpayers, and the people that need to have the money aren't getting the money. This is why I always was on that bandwagon that when you have all the illegal aliens come into this country and all of the money, the billions of dollars that went into that going towards other people, and we're not even taking care of the people that live here, that are citizens in this country. And it doesn't mean that I don't have any kind of empathy for individuals around the world that can't quite make it or that are being persecuted. I do. But there is a certain amount of control that you can have so that you are capable of having a continual program out
Free
there.
Karen Reed.
Yep, if you bankrupt your current program, that doesn't help anybody. So you need to be able to understand how to budget, a new word for some of them, your finances, to be able to have that continually be going out there and not overspend or borrow the money or make it worth less, because at some point you will run out of it.
The politicians, the problem, and we've talked about this before, the politicians rely on the fact that the average person doesn't think in terms of, when the government starts a program, I have to pay for it personally. because we've all been conditioned over the years to think the government will do this, the government will do that, and we don't realize that the government is us. So let's say, and I don't know what the number is, I saw it in the news the other day, but I don't remember. Let's say it's $1.5 billion that Massachusetts taxpayers have had to spend on dealing with the illegal immigrant situation, the housing and so on and so forth, feeding and housing. So presumably, if these people weren't here, that would be $1.5 billion that we haven't had to spend, all right? So instead of the state taking that responsibility on and paying those bills, let's say that we didn't do that. Let's say that the governor said, okay, we have $1.5 billion a year, but we're not going to put that on the state tax levy. What we're going to do is we're going to send each Massachusetts taxpayer a bill specifically to support illegal aliens. So let's say John McDonough gets a bill in the mail and it says, John, you owe the Commonwealth of Massachusetts $452 for your share of supporting illegal immigrants. Now, if they did that, what do you think the reaction would be of the Massachusetts taxpayer? If they got a specific bill for that, instead of just having it roll in, you'd have a revolution. A revolution. It would become immediately obvious that, hey, I'm actually paying for this, not the government, not somebody else. It's me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm paying for it, okay? And the problem we have is that people don't think that way. Well, okay, this program, oh yeah, it sounds good to me. Well, wait a minute, Mr. Chase. That's going to cost you as a taxpayer $320 a year. Are you willing to pay $320 a year to support this program? No, maybe I am. Okay, maybe the answer is yes, and it probably would be in some cases. But I can assure you that looking at all the federal programs, if you ask me that question for every single one, there are a whole bunch I would say, no, I don't want to support that. Please don't send me a bill for that program because I don't want to support it.
Sam,
All
will you
right?
read these three out
Yes.
loud, please?
Where's the meteor on the California wildfires? Where's the meteor on the spy balloons? Remember that story? Yes, that was a while ago. The city council is already on its summer schedule, 7 teaching days left. Woo, okay? I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, Bob. Why didn't the city manager tell the governor, we don't want the migrants in Lowell? Well, that's a good question.
Wouldn't be Democratic.
Now, what does that mean that city is on the summer schedule? What does that mean?
Every other week. Not every week, every Tuesday.
Is
So they
what?
do every other week, they come and have a live meeting.
Now,
Oh,
Bobby,
the
can
council-
you do
Oh,
a-
you mean it was
Can you do a Ric Flair woo?
Woo!
There you go.
Yeah, that type of thing, yeah.
So normally the council meets every week, but in
Yeah.
the summer they meet every other week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, they don't. Not it's the second and fourth.
Second and fourth, okay.
Second
So
and
twice a
fourth.
month. Yeah. okay.
instead of every
Well,
week?
it's not twice a month. It's second and fourth, and that's some weeks there's right. Like right now, many of the elected officials in Lowell are on vacation.
Yeah.
Okay,
But if you meet the second and fourth week of every month, then that's twice a month, right?
I bet you the sick days will be huge today.
I mean,
One
everybody
of the hottest
deserves
days of the
vacation.
year.
Not
do
faulting anybody.
Does the city council need to meet every week normally?
Oh, yeah.
They
I
do?
think they have that much work,
Okay.
of course. This is the best city council I've seen in a long time. They need to replace about 4 of them, but we'll see.
Well,
It's an
that's up to-
election year.
That's up to the 9% of the people who
Right.
vote,
Yeah.
right?
there
Yeah.
always needs to be a balance out there
That's
someplace.
right, that's
Yeah.
right.
And I just Tuesday, I had a hot mic. I said something afterwards. I will respond to that anytime someone wants me to. I live in District 3, and it's very important to me that I get the person I want. I don't want someone being led around by the nostrils. See, in our city, I'm happy with the mayor on the school side of things. Maybe might be the best mayor over Kennedy if he continues to do what he's doing, Mayor Rourke. That's how much I like him, because schools, to me, the only thing I really worry about. On Thursdays, I start to feel like I'm George Anthes, okay? I'm a Republican. I want to talk about, because George was powerful when you talked about the Supreme Court, Sam, let's say, okay? Or abortion. There was nobody stronger than George Anthes. So on Thursdays, I get a little bit of George in me,
It's okay.
But most of the time for me, there's nothing. It's a Billtopia thing. I have to give that guy credit. Bob, and he was a real estate man on the side, okay?
Yes, he was.
If you lose your schools, you're in trouble. Your house will be worth nothing. That's what he used to say to me all the time.
There's a lot of truth to that, yes.
Well, when John talks about what we teach kids in school, and you want to talk about the financial thing and balancing a checkbook and all of the other stuff, which would teach kids that there's only so much money that's out there, and you may have to make sure that you have enough to pay your bills. That and reading and the different things when they're talking about the scores across the nation. If they got rid of all of the social programs, now I don't mean art, music, things along those lines. I mean that they have, all this special stuff going on, and they just focus on academics. They focus on research. Teach a child how to look things up. Not how do I feel about doing this or how do I feel about doing something else. That can be a minor thing. But with all of the different programs that are out there, when you had the DEI and you have the different additives to the health program and all of the other stuff, and everybody is focused on what the adults in the room want versus what the children in the room need, then we will always have issues with your
Hey, Paul,
scores.
door should be open, come on in.
So anyway, Paul Cohen is coming in, and that'll be great. I don't know if you guys have anything else that you want to talk about. There's going to be sobriety checks across New England, across Massachusetts,
I guess somebody must have locked the door, I'll be right there.
For when?
this weekend.
Why? Is something special going on?
I
this
don't know.
weekend?
All I know is that there was one of the articles
They
that
used to
said,
do it for Memorial Day, and
well, maybe they didn't.
When I hear threats about it's going to be maybe the hottest day of the year today, I have a flashback of a few teachers I used to visit in certain schools until they passed a motion to keep guys like me out of their schools.
That was bad.
Yeah, well, this is how I felt.
Was that the
But
anti-Hoey
on a-
motion?
On a day like today, you'd walk into this one, I wish I could say their names too, but these
That's funny.
teachers, you'd walk into their classroom, they'd have the curtains down, the lights off, everything kind of dark.
Trying to keep
with-
it cool.
With about 3 fans, and if
Yeah.
it got any worse, they'd bring them outside. They'd do whatever they wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
but now they have to live by a lot of different rules, A teacher really can't be a teacher.
Well,
And when I hear, woo, only 7 days left, that bothers me. Because, Sam, wait till you hear it, maybe on Thursdays a lot, because Evelyn knows more about schools than most of us will ever know.
Well, she should.
I know,
Well,
but this is
you
what
think I would if I
Well,
was there long
I was a victim.
18 years on the school committee, she should be the
I like
expert.
to look at myself as a victim of the public school system. They let me go by the 3rd grade and the 4th grade and the 5th grade and the 6th grade, and I couldn't read. Right up to about my junior year, I started to pick up a little bit. I could tell time. I mean, think about that. Do you know we have about maybe 1,000 children, at least at Lowell High School, that have a hard time knowing what day it is and how to tell time? That's how bad it is. And I wish they opened up the government, take them into the military, infantry like me. I got the expert infantry badge. Yeah, I couldn't graduate from high school, but I'm going to tell you something. I did okay in life because the Army took me in. We got 1,000 kids at least that leave Lowell High School every year, that their future is bleak. And I'm going to fight for those 1,000 the whole time if I get on the school committee again. They're going to hear some beautiful stuff coming out of me this year. But I'll tell you, there's nothing more important than schools.
Bob, you want to read this one?
Yes. When I was a kid and wanted everything, which I still want everything, my wife doesn't give me it all anymore, my mother used to remind me of the money tree we didn't have out back. Yeah, I remember. I had to get all my clothes from the Giant store.
That
It's not a big
is
deal.
funny, because
me just
that
put
was
this-
my
let me just-
mother's
and
line.
yeah,
The
that's-
money tree, they
Yeah.
always, do you think we have a money tree out back?
Yeah, that was
No.
the standard in the
government
50s.
Oh, yeah, that was a
The
standard
government
comment.
does, but I want you guys to understand that
funny.
the mindset that the American public has is they has got to stop. We. It's our city, it's our town. We have to start saying, this is what we are doing. It's they in the school district. Stop that. It's our school district. Take it back. Call it ours, not theirs.
Yeah, well,
And
see, you're
stop
just making the
influencing
point I
elected
made earlier.
officials.
That's exactly right.
Well, you saw that in the state of
Right.
Virginia when you had the different school boards try to do stuff, and the parents said, we're taking our schools back. We don't like what it is that you're doing. It takes certain leaders and groups to be able to do something along those lines, if you can get it done.
That's how the governor got elected down there. That was the issue,
Yes.
the main issue.
Yeah, and he's still working at it in terms of, we want the parents to have a say in the education of their children, because it's their children, it's not the government's children.
He's all
But the
done.
government would like to have the children, but
He's-
we're not quite there yet.
He's all
But
done
we're
though,
getting
because
close.
the governor is term limited in Virginia. In a lot of the southern states, the governors are term limited to 2 terms. So,
Now, can they be off a term and then come back on again?
it depends on the state. In some states, yes, some states, no.
Okay, we don't have to go through
I-
that.
I- I
So when we
can't-
talked
I don't
about-
remember which is which, but there are some that it's consecutive, and others just say 2 terms, and you're done, you can't run again. So I'm not sure where Virginia is on that.
Check out the date, right, June 5th. Today, I told you my wife's birthday. It's also 5 days away from when you could pull your papers to run for school committee, city council, at large, or in your
So your
district.
deadline is the
It-
10th?
Well, 10th, you pick up your papers and run out and get yourself 150 signatures. It's going to be quite an...
150?
Yeah.
Hey, I just goofed up.
150.
Somebody sent the text, I hit the wrong button, and I deleted your text, so please resend your text. By mistake, I deleted it, sorry.
But yeah, look, I know there's only 4 minutes left, and Paul Cohen's in the room already, and I always love having him on the show. You can learn a lot when he's here. But what I'll say about education in our city, I did 7 years on the school committee. I didn't do about 20 like Evelyn did in Chelmsford. But what I did is I worked for 4 different mayors in that 7 years, and 4 different superintendents
There's
of
an
schools,
indictment right
okay?
there.
In 7 years. The first one, Mr. Sapasaris, I put a motion on the floor on the way out of there because I was running for city council. I put a motion to give him a 3-year contract extension because I never, ever seen a man that worked as hard as he did. It passed like nothing. It was easy. Dr. Kafawi come in, was a great human being. The guy lives in Chelmsford. He come in, and what he brought was talk about maintenance of effort, and he could fix any racial issue there was. I mean, I couldn't even say his name for a year, but I thought Dr. Kafawi was one of the best we had.
Trump
Then-
2028.
yeah, and
I
then
don't
listen, I'm almost done. Joe Boyd was the next one, the third one we brought in. 18 people on a blue ribbon committee, which I sat on, 18 people voted for Joe Boyd. There wasn't one for any other candidate that ran for school committee.
He didn't last that
Eight,
long.
because he came from Boston and brought in DEI. Okay? And last but not least, Bill Samaras, he come in to get rid of Dr. Kafawi, so he could get someone a job. But that's, it's just what you learn by being there.
Yep.
And what we need to do in Lowell, we got rid of Jay Lang. Lowell got rid of him. Terrible guy, that guy, huh? I
Oh,
just
he's
got...
doing wonders with us, and
Well, I
everybody
know
works
that.
well
I'm
with
just
Jay.
trying to be wise, But the biggest thing is having a city manager or a town manager and a superintendent of schools not clash, get along. Our mayor tried to do it at the end of the budget hearing for the schools. Mayor couldn't even get one vote, just to pull the city and the schools together for talks. That was it. But I can see the school committee's point, because they think they've been getting ripped off with maintenance of effort over the years, and I don't know if we did or we didn't, Sam, because you'd know more about maintenance of effort than I do. It's a $50 million question, that's for sure, that's what the schools and the city charges the schools to be in them. So we have major issues coming up in this election. I feel if you've been around a long time, beware. Beware, you might get beat this time around, because we're learning. We don't get a lot of people out to vote, but we're finally getting people to pay attention a little bit, because I don't think people watch us. I don't think people pay attention to government. I don't. The majority, because we just don't get a good vote out there. It's the same people over and over, but those people are starting to change.
Well,
'Cause
anyway,
like
we
me-
only have a few seconds till
all
7.
right, I know, like me, I changed. I looked for something different, a businessman. I voted for Trump. I ain't afraid to say that. I voted for Trump. You say that in the city, it might be a thing that can kill you in an election. But I'm not going to deny it. I was a Trumper. Am I happy about the Republicans? Nope, not now. Where's the no tax on tips? I want to see that. Where's the no tax on a person my age? I'm 70. Where is it? I want to see it.
Well,
Social Security, I want to see it.
They did the bill separately on the
Yeah.
no tax on tips. They said it was unanimous. They had the bill that had to deal with Social Security and found out that because of the way the wording was in the law, that they couldn't do what they wanted to do. So what they did was they raised the level at which you would be
We're going off to
taxed.
break land. Bye.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's pretty good. We're in the
That's not
picture.
bad.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Thoren. This is City Life, and we're on until a little bit before 8 o'clock, so we have another 58 minutes to go. I am your host, and we have Sam Chase, Bob Hoey, my co-host. We have Paul Cohen this morning. Thank you very much, Paul, for coming and hopefully sharing, and maybe with what's going on in Chelmsford, maybe people will learn a whole lot of stuff, and maybe it will rub off on the city of Lowell or Tewksbury or Drake or Tewksbury. You never know, because I'm certainly sure that you guys all share through the Mass Municipal Society all the different good things that you do. So, which might be an interesting question. How often do you meet as a group of managers or mayors? Because isn't it like collective? I know how the school stuff works and how the Superintendent's Association works, but with the leadership in all the cities and towns, do you have monthly meetings? Do you have regional meetings? I know you have an annual one, like everybody else does. So how does that work?
Yeah, the Mass Municipal Association has, member organizations such as the Managers Association, Mayors Association, and so forth. We generally have monthly meetings. I would say probably about 10, I'd say probably 10 meetings during the course of a year. Usually they'll skip a summer month and so forth. And then, as you said, they have the annual meeting in January. But in addition to that, the managers of the NIMCOG communities meet monthly. So, for example, we're meeting usually the second Monday of the month. Our next meeting is this coming Monday in Drake. So obviously we'll have some interesting discussions about Drake's town meeting. that just taking place this week. So we meet monthly as a subgroup, but that's independent of the municipal association. That's Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, which is centered out of Lowell. Their executive director, Jenny Raitt, sort of coordinates the scheduling of those monthly meetings. And generally we either participate in person or remotely, depending upon if somebody has something coming up. They have the remote option. So we have monthly discussions in terms of what are the issues of the day and of the region that we need to, hopefully coordinate with and help each other out.
So are there specific things that's on your agenda, or is it just kind of like general stuff?
It depends on, for example, if there's a regional, like for example, they're trying to do this housing initiative in Lowell, so the managers will talk about that, how we can progress towards that. But then there may be just general things like, what is happening at the State House, or what's going on with the MBTA zoning, or the, accessory dwelling unit bylaw, and sometimes we'll take advocacy efforts to support, certain changes. And so yeah, I guess it's a combination of both, Evelyn, depending upon what the issues are of the day.
And if somebody comes up with some kind of a solution, and they share best practices so that everybody can figure out if they can do it too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's collegial. I mean, every town is different. Certainly, I know it's a trite remark, but when we look across, even in our sub-region here, I mean, the issues that Tom Golden's dealing with the city of Lowell, in some ways are different than what we're dealing with in Chelmsford or Tewksbury or Dunstable, but in other cases, they're similar. And so we try to see if there's some coordinated things we can do. And another part is just sort of, just a discussion of, in some cases, just moral support, because we can sort of relate to what one's going through in the community. Obviously, like, for example, the city's budget is always later than the town budget. So the towns are usually, working on that in January, February, but the city's really working on it in April and May. So again, it sort of, flows in terms of what's going on. It's a good idea. I would say that. And as you noted, Evelyn, people do that in the, Massachusetts Association of School Committees and other groups that, or support, groups and, collegial groups.
Town
Yes.
Finance Committee,
Association
Association of Town Finance Committee, same thing, yeah.
And I'm sure and I know the Mayor's Association meets, but then even with them, there's sort of, I know there's the Metro Mayors Association, so like the Greater Boston Mayors will have meetings and so forth. So I guess it's sort of a combination of both,
Right, it's almost as if what you have on the municipal side is comparable to the school side, where it's divided up into regions or divisions. And some of it is geographical, and then other is by topic, so that you have like regional high schools, you have vocational high schools, you have urban cities, and there's a lot of
vocation,
overlap
exactly.
with regard to some of those particular divisions. So it's interesting because maybe a lot of people don't realize that there is a certain amount of working together within the state, that it isn't all just isolated of the 351 cities and towns. And then all of those, municipal side works with the education side. Sometimes it's the secondary education, sometimes it's only elementary, and sometimes it's college. So you have all different, post secondary, you have a lot of different levels of which your administration, not you personally, you figuratively, would be working with the schools, because right now you're working with the Chelmsford School Committee on all of the negotiation of their contracts. And then you have a vote at the table.
Yes.
And that may not be exactly the same in somebody else's city or town. And it may also be that you may have an administrator that doesn't even want to participate in that. They just want to know what the bottom line is going to be. Here's your budget. Please don't exceed that. But I know that you actively have participated in all of those negotiations, because you did when I was on the school committee.
If I was doing an evaluation on Paul Cohen right away, what I would give him is an exceeds when it comes to getting along with the superintendent of schools. It's a big issue for me. I talk about it all the time. How long you and Jay Lang have been a team?
It'll be a decade now, I think.
A decade.
Yeah.
I can't
It's
even
hard to
believe he's been with us that long.
Well, and this is just my opinion, it's an opinion show. To me, there's no superintendent of schools I ever met that knew more about money.
Oh, yeah, no,
money.
there's no question.
And I
Jay
know
knows the
he said it,
finances.
Evelyn got him
Yep.
on the show a few times, and I know he said you're gonna have some issues in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming up soon, and we have issues, especially money issues.
There's money issues, and I think part of the reason for the money issues, obviously inflation, obviously in terms of special ed costs, school transportation costs, special ed transportation costs. But also, I think the state hasn't been a strong enough partner to cities and towns. They rely upon the Student Opportunities Act but that has limits. That has a cap, I believe, of 4%. And we know inflation, particularly for special education and other services, has been more than that. And the state sort of, as I say, sort of has the luxury of what they call the fair share tax, more commonly known as the millionaire's tax. That has really been a supplemental treasure chest for the state. And
shock.
I think they've not really, have not adequately supported the cities and towns who don't have that resource. And that's why you see the struggles in places like Drake and Chelmsford and many of the communities across the state, is because, they'll tout the fact, we're going to give you $150 per student, but at the end of the day, that's less than 3%.
Yeah, like I talk about, like I know what I'm talking about when you say the millionaire's tax.
Yeah, well,
but I only-
that's because you pay that, I
Well,
believe. Every
not
dollar
me,
over $1 million.
not me. Maybe
you pay
John
9%.
McDonough, but
Oh,
not me.
maybe it's John, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
Remain
like it.
different here in Chelmsford and keep the cannabis dispensaries out.
So just to get back to that real quick, I only learned that the millionaire's tax and what they did with it at the state level, that they gave more to infrastructure side instead of the schools
So they gave
being
really to the
equal.
MBTA is where they're getting
Right,
most
that's
of the
where
money.
it went,
It was
yeah.
the MBTA bailout, basically, fund.
much.
And we all understand out in the suburbs the importance of the MBTA, but quite frankly, it's been disproportionate, like everything else. And I think the frustrating part is people pass that with the expectation that they would catch up on the roads and the bridges, repair and so forth. And I think so far people are underwhelmed with those results. That, you still hear about the grade and condition of the state's roads and bridges. It hasn't improved despite, that being a priority of this additional revenue. And I think that's when people lose confidence in their government is once again, something is promised but doesn't sort of meet the follow through.
Well, part of the problem with all of the stuff that they're trying to do with the bridges, takes forever for it to happen.
But it's not so much the effort; it's also the commitment to it, Evelyn. I mean, if you're devoting the lion's share of the funding to the MBTA, and then they have free fares and this other stuff, and it's become a social justice program as opposed to an infrastructure program.
Right, exactly.
And I think it's one thing if that's what you say you're going to do, but it's another thing is when you say one thing and then you do something else. And I think that's when people lose the faith in the government.
The bridge on Grove Street
Yes.
is going to be repaired at the speed of government,
It's going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced, yes.
and it's going to take.
About a year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half.
And we have Westwood
Why
Street.
is it going to take so long?
And the fact why,
Give me a good explanation.
well, because it's their standard protocol, meaning they don't, even the bridge that you're hearing about where they're doing the Mass Pike, where they're closing the 2 lanes and all the traffic jams, that's still going to be a year and a half project for them. It's the work over the Mass Pike that's being expedited. The reason is and I think the frustrating part is, John, you don't see people there working every day. And I think that's, I think that's sort of the explanation is
If they took the town, like, okay,
in other words, I think if people went by and they saw people working every day, they'd feel a lot better. But it's their standard protocol. They're going to we're going to detour traffic completely around those bridges, and I think that's the frustrating part is when people ride by and they don't see people working daily.
I remember when they were doing the bridge over the canal.
Yep, same issue. Yeah, you'd say where is it exactly?
Took like forever.
Yeah, and you say, well, where is everybody?
When I made time to get on, visit the crew,
Mm-hmm.
and say, WTF, why is it taking so long? They have to wait so many days minimum for the cement
To cure. Yep.
and that is not explained to the public.
Mm-hmm.
If Mother Nature's gonna take its course, Mother Nature has a great deal to do with this, and it takes a long time for this cement to set for
Mm-hmm.
itself, and that's the real reason for the delay. But why don't they explain that to the public at the time?
Yeah, I don't know that, and as I said, I think they don't put sort of an active project status report of like where are you at, like what's, you know, what's taking place in the weeks ahead. You know, like you would if you were doing a school project, right? You'd say, oh, this week they're working on the structural steel, and we expect to have that done by, 3 more weeks, and then we'll go to the electrical trades or plumbing trades and do the rough plumbing. You're right, John. They don't provide that level of detail. So then people, you say, they ride by, don't see people working, and say, well, gee, why are they not working on this project?
Marty Mann put up a bridge pretty quick, right? A Howell Bridge over near St. Joseph's,
Use the footings that were there.
and it's beautiful. That bridge is beautiful.
Footings were not replaced. When you drive, okay, if you want to see it really,
Well, you see it with the rock.
a real cool thing, an exercise that everybody should try to do is take 495 and get off at Route 3 like you're going to Nashville. And as you go underneath the bridge that carries traffic on the 495, you'll see the deterioration of those columns. And those columns, they're band-aiding those columns, not replacing.
Right.
Because if they replaced them, it would take this year and a half.
Right.
That's why they're band-aiding.
They've been doing that in Chelmsford Street, 495 bridge as well, and we've asked them, like, when are you replacing that? It's like, oh, no, we're repairing, restoring, we have no replacement schedule.
And that thing is really in deteriorated condition.
Paul,
Exactly.
other than people that pay taxes, the money that comes into the state, is it true when I hear the DOT, the Department of Transportation, makes the second most amount of money brought in by them because of the registry and tolls and all that type of stuff?
Yeah,
Is that-
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think I can't think of another, other than the lottery maybe. But
Yeah.
that's really not an agency.
Lottery
That's
helps schools,
yeah,
too.
The lottery takes in a lot of money, but yeah, I would say that's
Do you
probably
know
correct.
Drake, it brings in more lottery money than Lowell?
Yeah, they bring in probably more cannabis money than Lowell too. Yeah.
Oh, I doubt that. I
Oh,
doubt
I
that.
don't know.
Drake
I think it does, because they not only just have retail sale, they have cultivation and so forth.
But Drake is more like Lowell than it is like Chelmsford in terms of its overall budget, because Drake gets a significant amount of its revenue from the state, as opposed to Chelmsford that only gets roughly about 20% of its
Oh,
revenue.
even
Yeah,
more
but
like
Drake, it's a
more
little
under
cheaper than
15%
Lowell,
now,
though,
huh?
right? They
Yeah,
keep
so-
their taxes down. They keep them down in Drake. I believe they do.
The state, your property tax in Lowell only funds about 35% of your
Right.
municipal budget, whereas in Chelmsford, the property tax funds almost 80% of our municipal budget. And so when people want to know why we have the tax differential, that's 90% of the explanation right there. Okay.
And who's the queen of the foundation budget?
No, I'm not.
No, but I don't believe.
Mary
But I mean, if
France?
Am I right to say Chelmsford doesn't get a fair share? I believe.
Well,
you guys,
that's a matter of opinion, but I mean, if you look at it on an income basis, okay, because what the state does is they look at it from a property valuation basis, and they look at it from a per capita income basis, and then there's also other criteria. But if you look at it from a who's richer than who basis, it isn't fair, because we have the town of Westford gets more Chapter 70 money than the town of Chelmsford. And in the aggregate, the people in Westford are wealthier than the people in Chelmsford.
Yeah.
So why is that fair? And it's always been that way since the early 90s when the law was changed. Westford got the big hit because they had a rapidly expanding school population.
Which is no longer the case.
But that hasn't been the case for how long, Paul? Many years, right?
Yeah, probably a decade.
I watched Evelyn fight that issue for
And
a long time.
I'll tell you, back, as John would say, in ancient history, when I was on the select board, and not to really talk much about that, but I did participate in several hearings at the state level where they were trying to address the Chapter 70 situation. And one of the state legislators came up with what I thought was exactly the right solution. The reason it wasn't adopted is largely because he was a Republican, okay? And at the time, there were 25 Republicans, and he wasn't going to be listened to, all right? But his idea was, and if you took the numbers that prevailed at the time, his plan gave a set amount, I forget what the dollar amount was, per student, okay? And his theory was that the courts have decided that as a matter of law, as a matter of constitutional law in the state, your child is entitled to an education, okay? So once you've established the standard of entitlement, now comes the standard of obligation. Who's going to pay for it? So if the state says you're entitled, Representative Perry's theory was then the state needs to take on a lot of the responsibility in the funding. So his plan would have funded every student in the state at a fixed level, and I think it was $1,500. I think that was the number. And even doing that, it still left half the budget left over for a more progressive distribution, where you could take 50% of that money and push more towards places like Lowell and Lawrence, where you had the more disadvantaged students. That was his plan. Now, if that plan had been adopted, this was 20 years ago, Chelmsford would have gotten a $3 million hit right off the bat, okay? Because it would have equalized, every student got the same amount, and then those students in the poorer communities got more. That was his plan. And I looked at it, I testified, and he gave a speech, and I thought, you know, that sounds pretty good. And I contacted him, and I said, can you send me the details? And he sent me spreadsheets and spreadsheets, and I spent a couple of days going over those numbers, and I couldn't find anything wrong with them. His plan would have worked. The problem is, it would not have worked politically. So it got killed, okay? But if the state looked at it from the standpoint of each kid is in the same boat for a minimum funding level, and then whatever is left over can be pushed out to the poorer districts, to me, that was the solution. But that wasn't going anywhere politically.
Well, the
Wasn't
basic,
going anywhere.
the basic-
And it's too bad, because it would have solved the problems that a lot of the smaller towns have, the municipalities have, like Chelmsford, where, you know, wealthier towns are getting more money per kid than we are. That's not right.
And they were also raising more money from their property tax because they can pass the overrides there.
Correct.
And that's why,
Correct.
that's why I think it's the challenge of today is
Yeah.
you have a community like Drake that will not or cannot pass an override, but you'd have a wealthier community like, let's say, a Carlisle or so forth that would, or Concord. And then the question is that really an equivalent educational system?
It isn't.
Because the funding disparity, and I think that's what the legislature's going to struggle with as the education funding formula comes up for reconsideration.
But I think Perry's proposal would have addressed some of that by establishing a baseline for every student in the
Right.
state, regardless of the community where they live,
But
okay?
then how do you deal with the disparity for those communities that want to go significantly above baseline? And
Well, then
that's the issue.
they can pass an override.
Right, but then how does that become an equivalent funding system if?
It isn't.
Depending upon where you live, what educational services you get, because
Right.
if your community of Concord will pass an override, so they'll have 15 kids in the classroom, but Lowell won't, and there's 25 kids in the classroom.
Right.
Is it really an equivalent education
It
system?
isn't, and I agree with you, but that's also, in my opinion, a function of our, in my opinion, ridiculous system of 351 little kingdoms all trying to do the same thing. That, to me, is the real issue.
Right, because
that
you
will
don't-
never get addressed, because there are too many people today and in the future who benefit from having the structure the way it is.
Right.
It's never, ever going to change. But in my opinion, the solution is to adopt the system that they have in most other states.
Districts.
Districts, counties, regions, whatever you want to call them, and get the economies of scale. It makes no sense to me that we have 351 cities and towns and 351 police chiefs. For the land area and the population of Massachusetts, it makes no sense at all, and
how
no
many-
no offense to you, but it makes no sense that we have a chief executive officer in every single town. I mean, it makes no sense.
And how many water districts?
And forget the water districts, okay? But, you know, we need to regionalize, we need to economize and get the economies of scale. But it's never, ever going to happen in this state, never.
Everyone's favorite time of the show.
Oh, you get some announcements? Okay.
Oh, here we go.
All right.
That's better. Sorry about that. Okay. Neighborhood meetings. Next one coming up is going to be. Boy, I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties today. This old microphone's going to be some trouble. Too much static. Okay, let's try it this way. Sorry about that, kids. Okay, next meeting is going to be at Highlands Neighborhood Association, going to have June 9th at Lowell Catholic, 7 p.m. If your neighborhood is not listed here, be in touch with the Lowell Police, and they'll be happy to put your neighborhood group up here if it isn't already there. Farmers Market every Friday, starting now, right to October, 2 to 6 p.m., 350A Dutton Street. Now, so you know where that is inbound on Dutton Street, going towards City Hall, right at Broadway. Where Broadway will be on your left, there's a bridge on the right-hand side. Go over that bridge, and immediately on the left-hand side, you'll see the farmers market. So there's some fun stuff for the kids, stuff to eat. So go down there and peruse. They have fresh vegetables. Take advantage of this. It's starting now. Okay. This is the old one. I'll do another one in a second. Okay, if you need prayers said for anybody, you can call these nuns up. These gals are fantastic. The Monastery of St. Clair, the Poor Clare nuns out in Andover. Just call them up, leave them a voicemail, and they'll pray for whoever you want them to pray for. Just let them know what your issue is, and they'll say prayers. Moving right along. Now, this is out in charming Chelmsford, and this meeting's today. If you don't like those loud trucks out in Chelmsford, you got to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting tonight at the police station in their community room. It's going to be 7 o'clock tonight at the Chelmsford Police Department. And be there or be square. Get up there and tell them how you feel about the truck noise and the rumblings going through your neighborhood. I'm going to go, this is Kim Scott's party. The committee to re-elect Kim Scott invites you to a campaign fundraiser, Kim Scott, Lowell City Council, District 5, June 11th, it's a Wednesday, 5:30 to 8 p.m. at Cavaliero's, a tasty spot, and 573 Lawrence Street, lovely Lowell, Massachusetts. Donations start at $20 and go up. The Greek Festival, that's in 2 weeks, June 13th. At the Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church, a real tasty time to go. If you like Greek food, let me blow this up a little bit. I don't know if I can fit the whole thing on the screen. So if you take the camera out of your, no, I can't. Take the camera out of your, take your phone out of your pocket, take a picture of this, and enjoy this Greek food. They're at bargain prices, and it's wicked tasty. It's all homemade, all made by the gals over at the Holy Trinity Church. So please consider enjoying some of this Greek food. Those are the times. It's going to be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 13th, 14th, and 15th of June. School's going to be ending pretty soon, so Tewksbury's bragging about it already, but all the schools are going to be ending pretty soon. Corey Belanger is going to have a town hall. First town hall for any district in Lowell. It's the first town hall meeting. It's going to be Saturday, June 7th, 11 to 1 p.m. at the the Riley School Cafeteria, 115 Douglas Road. It's a good idea, so if you have any pats on the back you want to give the city, or if you want to give them some pie in the face, I mean that, don't mean that physically, I mean verbally. So go to this meeting, live it up. First annual, drag this over a little bit. First annual Gun Violence Awareness Vigil. Join us for a community gathering to honor victims and survivors as we work to end gun violence in the Lowell community. Please wear orange, bring a framed photo of a loved one as we come together for a collective moment of silence. This is going to be held by the city of Lowell, and it's going to be this Friday, that's tomorrow, 10 a.m. at City Hall. It says Friday, but it says Friday the 7th, but that's actually Friday the 6th. So tomorrow at 10 a.m., the wrong day, but that's okay. Tomorrow is Friday, so it's Friday. Hope to see you down there, and I think that's the last one. Back over to you, Evelyn. Turning your mics back on, kids. Here we go.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, welcome back to City Life. We've had interesting conversation off camera, off mic. To conclude the thing with that comparison, because there's something definitely I want to say because Bob's brought up 495. As far as the education level is, we were thinking and discussing about the fact that the Mass Association of School Committees did take the precedence that if you have public school education, then the public ought to fund it, and then when you mandate that. And the other piece, in terms of the formula part. And so when Representative Perry had his idea, his concept would be accepted by everybody, but how it would be funded might be slightly different, even though it would be a good idea. And the fact that he was a Republican wasn't going to help him any.
That's what killed it.
And that is unfortunate,
that's what
because
killed
instead, and that's what's happening at the federal level. It doesn't matter what good programs are out there.
Right.
If it's brought up by the opposite party, it's bad.
It's no good. Right.
And it's really a sad thing, because they're not working for the American people, they're working
Our
for
side's
themselves.
got to win. Our side's got to win.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
The
I
hell
hope
with the
people
Americans.
recognize that.
The hell with them.
Our side has to win, and we have to stay in power. Those are the two objectives of the political parties.
Term limits not here.
And then we will have, do you know the time, I know you know the timeline. So what is the timeline on the Westford Street Bridge being fixed, because they're going to detour out of the center of Chelmsford?
Yeah, the detour that's going to start, we deliberately worked with MassDOT to delay the commencement of the project until school let out.
Good idea.
Because we thought that would result in less traffic, less aggravation, people be taking vacations and so forth. So it's going to start later this month, both bridges, Westford Street and Gorham Street, and it's about an 18-month process. And again, both bridges will be closed in their entirety. And the reason we did that was, if we didn't do it that way, it would have probably taken another 6 to 9 months longer.
Oh,
and our
yes.
feeling was let's just get through the aggravation as quick as possible. So yeah, you'll start seeing work take place, demolition and so forth over the summer.
They did a nice job on Hunt Road. That leads into Pine Hill. When they
Yep.
finished that project, that took a while.
Well,
But,
because they didn't close the bridge.
no,
had
they kept
one-way
it
traffic.
open one
Exactly.
side, so
Right.
that you'd have at least some traffic, and hopefully.
That took a real long time, as
Yeah,
I
it did.
recall. Yeah.
Yeah,
Paul,
but
you know-
they did a nice job with regard to that. But Bob's made a comment about 495. Over the past several days, for whatever reason, 495 has had terrific car accidents. There was, and people died. And yesterday, Glenn was on his way back from the lake, and a police cruiser
State
came
police.
down. He was going south on 495, and the police cruiser was in the breakdown lane. Whatever happened as far as the breakdown lane goes, the guy flipped. The cruiser, at least he sort of walked away. But there was issues with that at that day, and my oldest son travels back and forth to way up in New Hampshire, just this side of the bridge. So you actually have to go all the way, 95 to where 16 comes, and you have to take that left. And so he works up in that area from Chelmsford, and he sees an awful lot of accidents, because people just, either they don't know how to drive, or they think they're in some video game. So please be cautious.
And drive fast.
And be aware of everything. Don't try to text and drive. It's illegal first, but you're still going to do it. And just be aware of that, because it is, the life that you may save may be your own as a result of that. I've seen I drive an awful lot of highway, and it's really, really bad. And 495 is very, very bad. It's almost like they have an accident a day.
It's very highly congested
And this
at all times of the day. I mean, you'd think by 10:30 in the morning, you'd see some relief, but then you go over the bridge and you say, wow, look at all the cars. Where are they going? That's what I always think, right? So,
Well, I know the state wanted to have a bill in order to reduce the amount of driving. Have you seen that
Let's
one,
give the
Paul?
government more money. That's a
how
good
would you do
idea.
that? How would they do that?
They're trying to provide more public transportation. And then they wanted to have, I know that there was some talk, it wasn't in that article, there was some talk of having automobiles have something so that you only could drive so many miles a day.
Or they would tax you.
Or they would tax
Or they would
you.
tax you on your annual mileage rather than
Yes.
just the
Oh,
flat,
yeah,
the
that's been
value of your
floated
vehicle. Yeah,
before,
because
yeah.
particularly if you're going to electric vehicles and you're not selling gas, where are you going to
Yep.
get the revenue?
Good
to fix the
idea.
roads?
You know an issue, Paul, that
yeah.
I wanted to hit you with? Sorry to
That's
interrupt
okay.
you.
No, that's okay. This
But
is
it
Jake. I
was,
just want to say something.
I think Lowell has some big issues coming up with our water. Evelyn has a few shows that we talk about water and the capacity thing and storage and overflow. Does Chelmsford have any issues with their water at all? Do you know?
PFAS is the issue. You know, the contamination from the, the
Chemicals.
omnipresent chemicals, that that have been used since the 1950s. The no-stick pans, the other aspects of, and so.
Sorry, Paul, one of the
Every-
most important parts of the show is what did Evelyn bring to eat today?
I brought, well, there's a bunch of stuff in there, but it tastes more like apple fritter bread.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Paul.
You know,
We can
I'm,
talk
I'm,
about that in
I'm
a minute.
impressed that you waited this long to do that. I mean, it's.
Oh, we got knocked off. I'm trying to do it all.
Okay,
We're
all
good,
right.
we're good, thanks.
You know, when Paul come in this morning, I looked at his shoes to make sure there was no manure on them from the farm.
Yeah, and yet-
Well,
and yet-
well, the reason why I say that, when I sit between these two week after week,
Yeah.
and I do miss now and then, but not much, you learn a lot about a lot of different issues, but water, like you have a well in your.
I have a well, I have a private well.
Now, there hasn't been a lot of snowpack. Now, has that affected the well water?
No, the large volume of rain that was there in May has restored, removed the drought conditions and
Pretty much.
restored the aquifers. So that's why you're not hearing any discussion about quantity of water. It's more the quality in terms of private wells really aren't tested for PFAS, and that's a concern that people have.
But it's certainly present.
It's present, and that's
Yeah.
the issue is so there's the public supplies like, Drake, Lowell, Chelmsford, so forth, they're installing PFAS treatment systems, but they're very expensive. There's Chelmsford Water District, which serves a portion of the town, roughly 60+%. They're going to spend $40 million to install the system. And then obviously there'll be costs to operate that system.
And that's directly on the ratepayers.
Exactly. And then the East Chelmsford District is looking at a $4 million plant because they only have like 760 accounts or takers. And then North Chelmsford is looking at a pilot program. And the question that we've asked at the select board, and actually they agreed the other evening, is that the community ought to look at consolidation of the three districts, not a town takeover, but a consolidation of the three districts, because there may be efficiencies of operation of having one unified district board, one unified, staffing system with expertise, one unified billing system, and so forth. This hasn't been examined in Chelmsford for probably 3 decades, and the question
more.
or more. And I think the question is given today's complexities and expense of running water districts that were founded over 100 years ago as really fire districts and water supplies, does that make sense? And so the select board have scheduled a meeting in mid-September for the three districts to meet with them to discuss an examination of consolidation. Thus far, we haven't seen any interest by the districts to initiate that effort independently, because as Sam noted earlier, oftentimes people are just looking at their own parochial interests in terms of, well, what about our own ratepayers and water takers, as opposed to, well, what's good for all the residents of the community?
Right.
Well,
and-
those
and
rate
to-
takers have to vote on whether or not they want to be consolidated, that's one.
That's not technically correct. The
No,
legislature
legislature
created,
can do
the
it,
legislature
right.
can create them, the legislature can modify
Right,
them. Just like they
exactly.
could modify and they did modify the city of Lowell boundaries with the town of Chelmsford.
But if you have the
when-
legislature do something like that, doesn't have to be initiated, they just don't arbitrarily say, hey, look, we want Chelmsford to consolidate, and they put the gavel down and they have to do it.
Well, two things done. One is the DEP, which is the regulatory agency
Right.
for the body, could provide incentives just like they provided incentives for regionalization of school districts, right? There was a sense, particularly out in Western Mass, is why did you have individual school districts? And the state actively pursued consolidation of school districts, right? Regionalization. And it doesn't really affect a town like Chelmsford because of our size of 5,000 people, 37,000 people with 4,000 students. But in many school districts in the Commonwealth, that's why you have a regionalized vocational school district, right? You wouldn't want every town running their own vocational system.
Which we did have at one point. When I went to high school, that is the way it was. And
Right.
I could go to Concord Carlisle Regional High School as a college prep student, and I could take an auto mechanics course,
Yep.
and I could take a shop course.
Right.
But to Paul's point, people started to think, well, wait a minute, this is because the technical education at that time was very capital intensive, okay? And people said, this is stupid. I mean, you know, we're going to save a lot of money if we regionalize. So I don't know. Have we saved a lot of money because we've regionalized?
Yeah.
I would
mean,
think so.
No one's saying we should break up the Greater Lowell Regional
No.
Voc School and let Drake and,
No.
and Tingsboro become their own
No.
vocational school. People look at that as absurd.
Right.
But yet it doesn't, everyone's resistant to change.
Oh,
That's the
big
bottom
time,
line. Is
big time.
And again, it goes back to the confidence issue. They don't
Big
have
time.
any confidence that what you'll do is what will be delivered. And instead, they look in the short term as to, well, what's my cost going to be?
Right.
And therefore, you're sort of at the mercy, I mean, we don't have regional, we wouldn't want to have a Chelmsford electric power supply or a Chelmsford, gas supply, because there's a reason why there are efficiencies, as much as we
Right.
dislike National Grid and so forth, there's a reason why they exist on that level of scale. And I think that's the concern is what is it ultimately, why is Enterprise Bank merging with Rockland Bank? Is because it's more efficient, but yet when you try to do that at the local governmental level, you get nothing but resistance.
Oh, you get, nobody wants any change. And the irony to me that I've always observed is the very people who politically advocate for consolidation of everything at the federal level. The federal government
Right.
should be able to override, state should be able to the very people who support that, if, for lack of a better term, progressive way of looking at the national government, are the first ones to squawk when you talk about merging the water districts. Because when it comes to local, oh, don't change my local situation. But conceptually, I think
Right.
Washington ought to run everything. And you say, wait a minute, so people are inconsistent that way. But one point I want to make to just close out the water discussion in Chelmsford, and just to point out probably the obvious, regardless of what happens and what the select board is trying to facilitate, the water districts are not under the control of the town. So the select board has no legal authority to compel the water districts to do anything. All they can do is they can facilitate the discussion, they can get the thing started, and try to get the parties together, and then the water districts themselves will have to come to some sort of a consensus as to how they go forward. And to Paul's point, if that should happen, and we should get a unified water district, it will not be under the control of the municipal government. It'll still be an independent authority.
Just like the Housing Authority.
Just like the Housing Authority, just like the Mass Water Resources Authority. It's an independent state chartered authority. It will not be under the jurisdiction and supervision of the town. But, I just want to make sure that folks understand
Right.
that.
I think people want to know is why not have the analysis done and wherever the results are, they'll take us. But the point is, nobody wants to even do the study. And I think that's the disappointing part.
Well,
is-
yeah, the reason nobody wants to do this study is because they're afraid that the results will show something contrary to what it is they currently
Right.
are doing.
Exactly.
And
Then-
so
then
they're
again, it goes
afraid.
back to what's the benefit of the rate of the water taker? Who's, like, as you talk about our schools or our water system, that's what it should be. The focus should be, as I said at the select board meeting the other night, if somebody came in and said, hey, the city of Lowell could run an effective sewer system, since they run the treatment plan, they could run the systems better, then I would say to the town of Chelmsford, we ought to look at it. Now,
Right.
because
Yeah, but
that-
not
because-
everybody does,
But
has
that's the
that.
problem. No, but in other words, what are you in here? What is the purpose of the operation? Is it to serve the ratepayers, or is it to serve the people in authority?
Well, the other part is things may
That-
get less,
and that
may be less money.
is the point. You just hit on the political point. That's exactly right. Why are we in office? Are we here so that we have nice jobs, or are we here to serve the people?
Well, that's why you are looking at things on a more effective and
Right.
frugal way of doing things, is because being in charge, you're in charge of the money, and you want to make sure that that money goes as far as it can.
Right.
And there's not as much impact to the taxpayer because they're getting more bang for their buck.
Right, and that was the issue, like with the regional dispatch, and that's why Drake and Tewksbury merged, saying, in today's world and technology, you can do it more effectively working together. And the state put money and incentives
Yes,
to
they
do
did.
that. And yet Chelmsford rejected that, or the select board of Chelmsford at the time rejected that option because of the fear of change and because people, who were employed didn't want to lose their status, even though they were all guaranteed jobs in the new system. And in fact, they probably would have earned more and had more opportunities for professional development, but that's because, again, people. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, that's why we have a regional jail, right? And think about the things we have, John.
Paul,
Yeah.
there's no way you can convince me a regional dispatcher is a good idea.
Why?
What's the address here?
It's Highland Street, probably 15 Highland Street. And if you call on your phone, or GPS will tell me where your call is coming from, John.
The GPS does not tell you where the call
Sure it does.
Have you been to the facility?
Yes.
It doesn't, it tells you within 100 yards
Yes.
of where the issue is.
Yeah. So how does that matter whether you're answering the phone in Lowell or you're answering it in Tewksbury?
Because when you call Lowell,
Yep.
you get a Lowellian.
Yep.
It's across from the Rogers School,
Yep.
and people know where that is.
Yep.
Out in regional dispatch,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know that stuff.
So apparently for a town of,
So,
a
I'm
city of
sorry,
100,
Paul.
for a city of 120,000 people, John, the people in Lowell could do it, but when you have the town, combined populations of Drake and Tewksbury of half, not even half that, you're saying it can't be done?
Well, why
That-
don't you
that-
just ship it off to India? Hello?
Well, let me ask you
You
this.
you probably could, John. What difference would it make?
Well, I think that's what he's
Yeah,
he's
right,
getting
which-
at.
You receive-
Well, let me
when
Because-
somebody you love is laying on the floor.
Right, John, but the point is when they go into those systems, they have a person, talking about someone you love, because of the quantity of people and the volume of calls, if the call is a fire call or a medical call, you'll have a person who's only doing dispatching medical and fire calls.
That's right.
Or police calls. Whereas right now, you've got Johnny doing everything, and you may not have that expertise in terms of the type of service that you want.
And let me
because
ask you this, because I don't know the answer, so I'll ask you. In Lowell, it has its own dispatch for
You gotta look at the microphone.
police
Listen to you,
for
yeah.
police and fire.
Yeah, yeah.
So is every dispatcher that works in the operation a person who is a Lowell resident? Is every single one
I
a
don't
Lowell
know what's
resident?
sold down there anymore.
Okay, so
Exactly.
that's my question.
Yeah, because if they don't know the way that
Right.
the roads go, then
Right.
nobody
Well,
else
they can
does.
say to a colleague, look, somebody's having a heart attack at Evelyn's Bakery. Where's that? Oh, and they know where it is.
Well, you can do that in the
Regional
regional.
dispatch, they don't.
Maybe, maybe not. It depends on who's staffing the calls.
Exactly, because most of the people, oftentimes the people
Right.
that you're hiring now are no longer residents of the community or
Yeah, that's
grew up in the
correct.
community.
Correct.
Even the police you're hiring nowadays are coming on civil service and so forth are no longer,
So when we regionalize the police department now, no more Chelmsford Police, be regional police. How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel about that?
fine. How do you feel about the state police, John? When you're on the highway,
police
when
was
you're on the
under-
highway, does it matter if the state police officer's from
State
from
police
Weymouth or if he's from
Are
Lowell?
a disgrace.
The operation's a disgrace, but the concept isn't a disgrace.
Correct.
But the operation's a disgrace.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And operationally, that's what they're out there for. And you go to regional police and think they're gonna do a better job, they're not.
It works in other states,
John,
John.
they have this thing called county government
It
in other
works in
parts
other
of the-
states.
That's fine. And Paul, who's
Yeah.
in Chelmsford? You've been the manager like since the son was born, okay? And you're
Yeah.
a great man. How many people have been fired in your career?
Well,
Less than 10?
fired, John, or
Fired.
agreed to leave the employment
Fired.
of the town. There's
Fired.
a difference between the two of those. I would say that there's several people whose employment have been terminated or severed with the town,
When
which
you
may
say
not,
several, is it 100?
not 100, no.
Is it 50?
No, it's not 50.
We
It's
don't have-
probably, it's
yeah.
probably,
Okay, so how many
it's
employees-
I would say probably in my 18 years, it's probably been maybe one a year.
We don't have as
Yeah.
many employees as Lowell
Yeah.
does.
I'd say more than that.
So
probably,
before
but-
we run out of time here, I want to make sure
Regional
that,
dispatch, no, I'm not. So-
Anyway,
Thanks.
before we run out of time, I want to make sure that anybody that is listening live to us knows that there's a meeting tonight at the police community room in Chelmsford, Chelmsford Police Department. And the possibility, according to what Paul said, is that you may not
Yeah,
have a
the
discussion. It may be.
The applicant.
He's just
is
pushing it
requesting
off
a
into the.
continuance,
Yeah, because this time you've got a lot more publicity with regard to that because,
You may have some people show up.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. But they did schedule it with the Parker School concert that's going to be at the Performing Arts Center tonight, so there is a conflict for us. So if they postpone it to another night, they may get 2 more people that are far more vocal.
Have you sent me a bunch of pictures?
I sent you a bunch of pictures because we had a dedication of the,
You want to do those now?
yeah, we can do that, because Paul was there.
Yep.
And
Hey,
it's
see
the Alan Thomas
There's Duck
tennis
Lane.
courts.
We know that guy.
There's Jay.
there's Jay.
That's our superintendent of schools.
We
There's
know that
Paul.
guy.
And there you go.
Yeah. And then we had.
And we know that guy.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Jeff Doherty.
Jeff Doherty, yeah.
Yep, he was on the school committee,
Yeah.
and always sense of
There's-
humor. And then there's Al,
Thomas. Yeah.
who had a lot to say from such a small piece of paper.
He looks pretty good.
Yeah, he's been very sick.
And there's the food.
And then they had a nice cake.
Pat.
Yep, I took a picture of the cake, so people would know that there was a very large cake.
Did you make the cake?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Food
Was it a
service.
yummy cake? I don't care.
I don't care. I don't eat it, but
a marble
food
cake,
service.
yeah.
Food service provided the cake, and
There you
there was
go.
water.
It looks delicious.
Looks a little lopsided, actually.
Well, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
So, and there was a nice group of people that were there. It was interesting because it was almost like a deja vu moment to me, except everybody was a lot older, because a lot of those people I knew when I was on the school committee. Would be interesting to see who they invited, because there were only 2 former school committee members that were there, Mike Rigney and myself, of
how did
all
you
of the
find out
people.
about it?
I got a specific invitation from the Chelmsford Public Schools.
A piece of
You see
US
George
mail?
Simonian
Yes,
sitting there
U.S.
on the
Mail,
left.
got an invitation.
I know.
George Simonian was there.
I know.
Yeah, he looked good.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah, he
He's
appeared
in
to
his
be good.
90s, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we had that, and congratulations to Al on that. We knew that, we had,
What does the W stand for? in
Warren,
W?
Warren.
Is it Warren?
Warren,
Okay.
yeah.
Warren Allen Thomas. All right.
Junior.
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 Yep, so, anyway, so that happened on Tuesday. Then we had the Permanent Building Committee Tuesday evening, so I got to see Paul quite a bit this week. And so there wasn't much updates as far as the schools go. You're meeting on a regular basis? Okay, how often is that?
At this point, it's monthly. At some point, it'll be twice
It'll-
a month.
yeah.
But at
Or
this point,
more.
yeah, more. But
As needed.
yeah, but the big thing that's coming in Chelmsford on the 23rd of this month, Monday the 23rd, we're having a special town meeting at the senior center at 7:30, and we've got 5 article special town meeting warrant. The primary aspect of that is we're looking to fund a $4.6 million replacement of the Southborough Elementary School roof, which half is going to be reimbursed by the Massachusetts School Building Authority. That's really the primary purpose. The reason we have to do the meeting now is we didn't have the cost estimate and work done and state approvals in time for spring annual town meeting. And if we wait till fall annual town meeting, we won't have the preferred bidding window because you really want to bid this in the late fall, because obviously a school roof you got to do in the summertime. So you want to get to the market early and in the right window. That's the primary purpose of the meeting. We're also asking for an additional $700,000 to replace the elevators at the high school, McCarthy Middle School, and Westlands Community Center. There's also an article to fund a library employees union contract. There's an article to fund a perimeter survey for the restriction on the Coolest Farm property. And then the last article is to approve cemetery regulations for mausoleums. So we expect it to be a one-night special town meeting. And again, we did it for the 23rd because we're trying to catch people, as you noted, before everybody disperses for the summer.
Which article is going to draw the most interest to you?
Well, the one that drew the most interest in the Finance Committee and Select Board review were the cemetery
I
mausoleum
couldn't believe it, but you're
regulations.
right.
But why? First of all,
Because some
can
people
understand.
on the FinCom thought that we were talking about zoning and high-rises in the
Right.
cemetery.
And so, there were questions about whether
Right.
what would the height of these mausoleums going to
And
be. So
the-
it has been modified to 36 inches
Right,
plus or
but
minus.
even with that, the answer really is that these will only be allowed in a certain designated area.
Yep.
We're not talking about 55 mausoleum constructions right along the perimeter of Route 129,
Right.
which is what I think the concern probably was.
Or if people
right.
had bought their own
Right.
individual lot.
And it's only 16.
Yep.
It's limited to 16
Yep.
and that's a big cemetery. So to me, the impact visually is going to be minimal.
But they already have monuments at the cemetery.
That is
So it's not as
correct.
though they don't have above-ground
To
structures.
me, it was a non-issue.
Yeah.
but,
I
you know.
think the big impact when you live in Lowell, looking at Chelmsford, is like the property at the old Reform School up on Princeton
Yeah,
Boulevard there.
that's now open. They have
Yeah.
occupancy of the first phase.
Well, I see how beautiful that is when
Yeah.
you drive by it, and I
Yeah,
just see your
luxury
numbers for
apartments.
schools to grow.
Yeah,
Your
but
schools
they're
attractive.
mostly 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom units, so you
Won't be much
generally,
of an
you won't have a
impact.
lot of,
No.
you know, and besides with the rents that people are paying to
Oh.
live there, I don't know, you know, they'll probably send their people to private schools because it's just.
But your
you're talking
school,
like
your school
4,000, yeah.
system is attractive for
Yes.
people. I've had a few
Yes.
friends
No, there'll
buy
be some
homes there.
students there,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah, where it's gonna be 400 units when it's all completed. The first phase is done, the second phase will be done in August, and the final phase completed in October. So yes, we are keeping an eye on it.
The-
Obviously, the schools are mindful
Right.
for class size and bus schedules and so
But
forth.
the history, Bob, of these projects, and I'm going back 30 years, because I've been in town for 46 years.
Yeah.
The history of all of these apartment/condominium type projects is, the fear is always that the school system is going to be overwhelmed. It never, ever works out that way, okay? I remember when Kensington went in, that was a huge, because of the size and scope of the project,
Project, yeah.
right? And people were totally convinced that we'd have to build new schools because
Yeah.
of Kensington. That didn't
Yeah.
happen, okay?
No,
so-
but what happened with Kensington,
Yeah.
Sam, was that was when Mosher was superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
He had to have a separate bus run
Well,
because
yes.
they could not go to Byam because Byam was overflowing, so they had to go to center school.
Right.
So they did move the students around, and they did make an impact.
But it wasn't an overall capacity
You
issue.
wouldn't have had it
Right.
that you had to build a
Right.
brand-new school.
And then eventually they did redistricts because
Right.
eventually.
They keep redistricting.
Couple of
now. It
times since
changes
then,
the
yeah.
lines
Right.
because of people. And
But
they're gonna do
now-
it again.
Right, but now with there being, all the kids going to the same middle schools,
Yep.
the impact of redistricting is a lot less anxious for people, because.
That's true.
Yes, and I
It's really only
liked-
the elementary,
I
it's
really
really only
liked
the
all of
4
that stuff,
elementary
too.
schools, yeah.
There was something that came up with Mike Rigney. He and I would talk, well, he was talking to me about it, and that's the Mass Cultural Council. Are they very specific on giving out awards? Because he seemed to, I think he said they had like 80 applications or whatever. It doesn't mean that they're all funded. And the Arts and Technology Education Fund, which is funded differently, obviously, basically had 3 applications and we awarded 1 this year, which is the smallest it's been in 29 years. But does Mass Cultural Council, can they modify and restrict their funding distribution, or do they have to always rely generally on what the liberalness is of the state? Do you know?
Yeah, I think they have to follow the state guidelines.
Can they have their own stuff, their own policies, their own criteria?
I think as long as it's not in conflict with the state, with the state's policies, you can
Okay,
have.
because I was gonna review that, because he asked me some questions about whatever it was, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and I asked him a lot of questions. I said, well, I'll have Paul on. And are they full as a committee? Are you, off the top of your head? I mean,
don't
there's
re-
so many committees in
Yeah, I
town.
don't recall.
It's not fair for me to ask that question.
Yeah, I think they can take membership.
I just don't know if I want to do one more committee.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm at my level. And last week, I wasn't here because I had a new granddaughter.
Congratulations.
And.
How many is that now?
9.
9, wow.
Yep,
Unbelievable.
yep. And so she is a week old,
What did she weigh when she was born?
7'10".
Oh, that's good.
And she was early.
And
She
the
was early.
name, of course, John wants name.
Her name is Annalise Cecilia.
Wow.
And I think
That's a
that's
spelling
after,
test.
yeah.
Anna
Well, that's
was-
okay, because the
Talk about
first,
spelling, John.
well, the oldest one is Henley Patricia. I mean,
Oh.
so let's not have any small names here.
Yeah,
The
oh.
ones, the
and-
kids.
Or easy
in-
ones to spell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Don't do that.
No,
SAM
because
would
they
have been, yeah.
But they did take my advice again, and that is that all children, all of the 4 of them have names that were family members. Some living and some gone for a very long time, because they're great-great-grandparents and great-grandparents and things, and at least they were creative with their names. So
So-
there's not as many.
So do they all have like nicknames now? What are they gonna, are they really gonna say the whole name when they call?
I
when
have
they-
no idea.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see, because it's not like Bob, that's easy, but what are they
Right.
gonna say when it's Anna, people tend to abbreviate. You know, the
How do you
Elizabeths, the Liz,
nickname
and-
Henley?
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
we asked
Yeah.
that question.
Oh, they start-
She said some of the people call her H.
H, yeah, that's what I'm saying. They'll
Okay,
start using
all right,
initials,
all
yeah.
right,
Or
yep.
middle
And she
initials.
Her name's Henry?
No, Henley.
Henley.
Oh, I thought you said.
H-E-N-L-E-I-G-H.
I misheard you.
Oh, yeah. Start
Yes,
using
instead of
initials, yeah.
having an
Right.
L-E-Y like the shirt, or L-Y, they have L-E-I-G-H,
Right.
which
Ah,
a
okay.
very few percentages of
Right.
Henleys is spelled that way.
But there are Lees that are spelled that way.
Just
L-E-I-G-H.
FYI, tomorrow City Life, Cliff Krieger is going to be here. Eileen Del Russ is going to be here. Cliff's working on getting some of the city council candidates on the show, so
Well, why
I
doesn't
don't know
he
how
run?
successful he was. We might have a surprise appearance.
Let Cliff
Time
run
is
for
short.
city council.
Anyway, thank you very much, Paul,
Thank
and
you
for
very
all
much.
the information that you've
Okay.
given to us. Look forward to the next time. And thank you, Sam, and
welcome.
Bob for getting up extra special early. And we'll see you next week. John Moses will be on next week, and we'll see what kind of interesting discussion we'll have with him regarding especially his nonprofit.
I volunteer to step aside and Glenn can take my place.
I don't know that
Say
that
goodbye,
would be
kid.
appropriate.
Debate.
Bye,
I think so.
everybody.
Thanks for watching.
one I
See you
would
tomorrow.